Hi, Sachin.
Hey Dinker.
Sachin, one of the things I have been thinking a lot about and we have been discussing is assets.
Yes.
And today I wanted to do some more digging around into the concept of assets and obviously why assets, but also how are assets different than anything else. So before I kind of share my thoughts and opinion, let me ask you, right? Oh, what's your definition of product, especially we'll come to the consulting side, but what's your go-to definition for what a product is?
I mean, to me, product is anything which we build to solve a specific problem. And there are consumers and there are solution providers. And I would say that it's a simple definition. That is the mental model for me. If I am using an app to file my taxes, that's a product for me. Somebody is designing that system and I'm consumer of the system. It could be internal, it could be external. So technically, this casts a wide net across almost everything which we do in software industry, and it is important to extend this wide net because now you are thinking about who are my consumers rather than thinking about utility. I mean, one of the most ignored parts of software systems are utility systems
Hmm.
because we believe that only internal people are going to use it, people who are in administration or people who are in data centers, and they are not my customers. So organizations think my customer who actually earns revenue to me is the customer. I
Hmm.
know the thinking is changing rapidly, and now a majority of folks have switched on to this side of product thinking and thinking about even their simple monitoring systems internally as products because there are people and they provide massive value to maintain that system up and running. So they are thinking about them as products. Uh, but there is a differentiation in terms of when you are building a system, who is your uh, customer? And I think that thinking needs to get a little bit mature with a lot of folks. Your customer is not always the person who pays you, but your customer is the one who is actually extracting the maximum value out of it. And figure out how you can make their life easier. How can you provide them value? And that would be product value.
So a couple of things I want to kind of unpack from your response. So one thing, in product management, we differentiate between customer and a user, right? So
Okay.
for example, in my startup where the app was used by a child, they were the users of it. They were the ones, as you say, extracting the maximum benefit from it. But the people who were hopefully going to buy it, which they didn't in droves, were the parents, right? And in an enterprise scenario, the purchase department is your customer in some way, and the exec who has done and evaluated all the competing products and chosen your product for his or her team is the user. So yes, it's very important to think about both of them, right? The other thing that you called out was right fully that it in some way product is that vehicle from where we as an organization pass our value generation to the customers, and in return they give us money, right?
Absolutely.
And that's why the bias for paying customer versus an employee whom you are giving salary kind of starts creeping in, right? And I had blogged about it. There was a very famous bank, a very big global bank, who lost triple digit $1 million because of an employee error. Though there are a lot of analysis of why that error happened. Maybe it was a failure of checker maker, maybe it was a failure of training, but I also feel that it was a failure of how we create products for our internal users, right? We think employee has to use it, can't crib too much about the experience. Let's put something in their hand. Focus is probably on somewhere else than the employee experience, right? All these things come into picture. And as you hinted, there are certain products which are operational in nature, which is only used by internal people. A lot of organizations have it. For example, the intranet, um, an application where you go and submit your leave. These kind of applications, right? They're only used by
Yes.
employees, right? And people think of these as a cost, right? A cost of doing business. Few years back, I was talking to one of our clients who had asked this question. We have these interesting apps. Can we commercialize any of these? And we had created a framework or set of actions they can take to commercialize it, right? And it's something I will link to in the description also. But the idea there was that even though it is something that you have created for a certain purpose within your organization, the seed of the thought should be that if it is useful to you, it's useful to someone else also. And the whole struggle is to find that product market fit for it. Who will it be useful for? Right? And that is the kind of decision you start making. And Sachin, if you look at the evolution of this whole thought process, right? There is a product which has a price, which has a placement, right? The whole marketing definition of a product theory in the marketing theory. And software kind of started creating a whole new set, the internal things that we were making. And I think AWS is a very good example of what an organization can build for itself. And when they take right set of actions and they ask that question, who else can this be useful for, they can actually convert something into an external facing product also. And that's why there was this whole terminology being used at one point of in-house products, right? These
Mhm.
are products, but they are for in-house. We use
Right.
it for ourselves. And there used to be every once in a while some innovation, some exec who has been charged with innovation or improving employee morale or finding new ways of revenue generation, used to come and say that, okay, let's try to figure out if we can monetize any of these, right? And that step started happening. And I think somewhere in that process, the concept of assets came into picture. So
Right.
before I go into what I feel assets are and what market feels assets are, when you hear assets, what comes to your mind? What's your go-to definition for an asset?
I think asset is any reusable entity which I build to generate revenue for me. This is like how asset is world used in commerce terms in uh, other industries as well. So I don't think that definition need to change for any software company. So when I am building an asset, essentially it should be something which I am building through my own investment, but it provides me a value which is going to be a recurring value, and it
Hmm.
is preferably exponential value. Your AWS example fits it rightly. Is they were building something of a virtualization platform so that they can fuel innovation, engineering experience to support their needs. But they realize they don't need to hold that innovation to themselves. They can, in fact, sell it out and make even more money out of it. And
Right.
today, it is one of the most thriving business in cloud industry. So yes, kudos to them. Uh, the only change which I would like to like bring is In software terms, assets doesn't need to be very big ones. Sometimes they don't even need to be products, and that is where mistake starts happening.
Hmm.
So earlier, when I used to speak about asset, people used to say assets and products are same,
Hmm.
and not every asset is product. But theoretically, you can convert majority of your products into asset if you design them in certain way that you can assetize it and you can make money out of it. You can monetize it basically. So, and these assets could be anything. These could be digital assets. Example is assets in the form of your Excel sheets or templates or Word files, graphics, audio, video material. I mean, if you think about all these edtech startups,
Hmm.
the recorded videos which they make are their digital assets,
Right.
which they actually charge for. Or you and I make $0 out of our podcast, but this is the asset which we are generating by investing our time into it and putting our thoughts into it. So uh, companies need to now raise up to the occasion that earlier they used to build systems, and we were talking earlier about how they should not think about building system but building a product, think about building a product. And that change needs to be applied here as well.
Right.
Whatever utilities you are making, whatever digital assets you are making, they can be monetized by converting them into an asset. And to create an asset, all you have to think about, it doesn't need to be very specific to a specific need which you created.
Right.
Uh, so can it be general? Can it be applied to more than one place? So if I'm going on a consulting engagement uh, and I want to, let's say, assess uh, some employee capabilities, I would say, and I
Right.
created a rubric for that, and it's an Excel sheet. That's a perfect example of asset.
Or a Google sheet.
Uh, or a Google Sheet for that matter. And I can just take this sheet and make it generic so that it is not targeted to a specific customer, but I can now take it to 15 customers. That's an asset for me. I can make money out of it. And that also has IP because I thought about that rubric.
Right.
I thought about that calculation. And this is something which is valuable, which people should pay me for because um, uh, what I created, somebody might say, all you have is this sheet which you are bringing it to me, and you are entering numbers and you are charging me, let's say, ungodly amount of hours for this, uh, dollars for this. And I think they are missing the point is that Excel sheet creation or that sheet creation might have taken, let's say, 500 hours
Right.
of, and before that, thousands of hours worth of experience in the market,
Right.
learnings, education, all that to create that one rubric. So I would say that is an asset for me. Anything which you allows you to monetize your capabilities or experience, you can convert that into an asset and then start giving it to people.
Right. So let's take let's look at the definition of asset that is arising step by step. So first definition is that asset is not something you go on the side and create. It is something that is already getting the roots, the DNA of it is already getting created in your BAU work. What you need to do is identify things which can be reused, are getting
Yes.
used a lot, and extract it out, keep it on the side, and go ahead and reuse. So I think code reuse was the most is the earliest of assets that people
Yes.
started creating, right? And libraries in that way was asset DLLs and dot A's. These were all assets that people were creating. So you don't have to create the same thing over and over again. So first thing is it's not a side project. It's not something. It's something whatever you folks are doing over and over again, right? And the second thing that you mentioned was that it need not be code. If we think of an asset just as a code, we will end up developing a lot of libraries, a lot of reusable code. The asset also covers your processes, things people are doing to learn a new capability. So, for example, this podcast or the product management podcast that I do on the side, plug. These are ways where we are learning. So one person learns it, and then you reproduce it and keep on sharing with everyone else, and it becomes an asset. So asset need not be tech; it can be any form of recording of knowledge, hard knowledge, right? And that's why the definition. Uh, and the advantage that asset brings is not just saves the cost, it has bunch of other advantages. It can accelerate so your time to market, so you're not wasting time on something that you have done 10 times before. And if that component is well thought of, has iterate over a lot of iterations, it has achieved some form of stability and levels of quality, you're benefiting it from every time someone new joins your company, someone new joins your team, they can start using these assets and they are up and running even faster at the same quality as the rest of the team. So it a bunch of these advantages. I think because you and I work a lot in the area of, I mean, we work in the area of consulting, usage of assets in consulting becomes even more critical, right? So rather than going and spending time recreating something when we are charging clients by an hour, doesn't sound right. We have done it before. Let's spend the time solving your specific problem rather than do something that has been done 10 times, 20 times before. It accelerates us, it accelerates the clients that we have in solving their problem, and overall it helps everyone. And one of the leading organizations in world of consulting, McKinsey, right, they actually formed a group called Solutions, and on their public website, and this is when I read it, it kind of felt very nice that someone else is also thinking like this, and it feels very good that the smarter folks at McKinsey and similar other organization, I'm sure everyone else is also thinking about it. So the formal definition they came up with was asset-based consulting helps us deliver insights and impact quicker than ever. Our solutions leverage advanced knowledge, proprietary data, deep expertise to help client in new and exciting ways. And I think this part, right, deep expertise, right, encoding of your knowledge, encoding of your experience, that, and you rightly pointed it out, when someone is going and bringing that Excel sheet, it's not about, hey, you asked me these 15 questions, but it became about you knew exactly which 15 questions to ask. And you know that,
Yes.
and you know that because of hours and hours of your experience, and much more hours of your organization's experience that people are ultimately benefiting from. So that kind of lays the ground. What I feel is assets, and we will always have this questions, asset versus a product, right? But before I go deeper into it, right, one thing I wanted to hear from you is, um, product has a price, and that is the theoretical minimum for a product, right? Whereas, as we see, an asset may not always have a price. It may be helping in delivering a product, it may be helping with things. It does not have a, very rarely will asset have a price of its own. How do you see this? How do you see, does this bother you? Do you think it's breaking some very basic definition? What's your thoughts on these?
Sometimes I also believe asset doesn't need to be visible to the customer as well, uh, or the buyer. Example I can give about is, um, if I am a consultant and I need to generate some charts. Let's say simple use case. I have collected some data and I need to create some charts. And over the years, I have figured out there are certain visualizations which are very specific to
Hmm.
ThoughtWorks or my like the company which I work for. Now, if I have created, uh, let's say, a set of formulas, configuration, and settings into my Excel sheet to generate those charts in certain fashion, that's an asset for
Hmm.
that allows me to basically generate those specific charts in the fastest way possible, which nobody else can do. And
Hmm.
now I use it to my advantage in a way that I can impress my customer that they collected data for only 30 minutes and they produced this beautiful report for me. And I was just like impressed with it. Now, this happened because of a reusable asset which I created in the background so that I can create that differentiation, bring that edge to me. Uh, and same thing happens in many more professions.
Hmm.
Interior designers, they have templates.
Right.
I mean, the good companies which actually do designs of, let's say, clothing lines, they have their proprietary ways of cutting cloth so that there is minimal amount of wastage so that they can increase their profit margins. And these are something which they are building internally
Hmm.
for their employees. But that's an IP which they create. So
Hmm.
if they are, let's say there are two companies, one clothing company is making, let's say, 100,000 shirts every month. That is the throughput they have. And another company is making 100,000 shirts per month. And let's say you need to acquire one or the other company. What you are going to look at is, okay, what is so different about these two companies?
Hmm.
The company, if they have been very smart about their operations, creating these assets of, let's say, minimal wastage or even better ways of stitching. Uh, and with that, let's say they require less people to produce the same amount of clothes or less raw material to produce same amount of clothes, or their packaging is very different, they are going to get premium pricing compared to the
Hmm.
other company. So similarly, every company, every team, they should think about what are the uniqueness which they have in them, and can that be extracted into an asset. And
Right.
I am not saying coded, because as a programmer, the first instinct is if it is not coded, what am I building? Am I looking at just a sheet? I mean, as simple as uh, I came from your website. I think you have multiple templates about business canvas.
Right.
That's a great example of an asset. It is nothing but a printable PDF.
Right.
You can download it and you can actually print it and you can start filling those boxes. So somebody might think, what is so special about it? Why Dinker is charging, let's say, $500 for this template?
I'm
But what
not.
they're
Maybe I should. Maybe I should. Yeah.
I mean, I will pay for it.
Yeah.
But point is that those boxes are not intuitive for somebody to just start with. Those boxes came because of a reason, the definition behind it, how to use it, when to use it, what you get by using that particular box is something which is critical to me. So I absolutely don't feel that assets and products are being compared. In my mind, it is going to be more and more visible to people the difference between asset and a product, and they are going to focus on building more asset. In fact, I can bet you that today a lot of people actually are building assets. They just don't know they are building assets.
Yeah.
Just like they were building products, they didn't know they are building products.
Right. In fact, if you step back and then look at the definition that's emerging, right? Asset is something that is an outcome of your existing work. Asset is something that you reuse. Asset is something that gives you advantages like faster time to market, so on and so forth. And the fourth one that you called out, right, is assets encode your hard knowledge, things which are unique to you, things which are your IP, which differentiate you. uh, Assets represents the hard encoding of that into something tangible. And that's, I think, is a very important point, because yeah, we don't live in a world where someone joins an organization and they retire from that organization, right? People move out, people move in, but the knowledge of the organization should stay within the organization in a manner which a newcomer can quickly ramp up to, right? And quickly go through that asset, or even use that asset and start learning the ways of working, and immediately ramp up to that. And if that hard knowledge has been encoded properly, then as soon as someone joins, or even if it's someone junior, they can quickly go and deliver the same value to a client in consulting scenario, or have the same kind of output and outcome in any other kind of scenario. And I think that's why assets are gaining importance, not just in consulting organization, but also in product organizations, where they have started realizing that my reuse has to go beyond code. It has to be in how people are learning, how my different processes are, what is my core knowledge, my core IP, and how do I ensure that it is available to anyone who needs it. Pricing may not be an important criteria for asset, because asset is paying for itself, or asset is getting the benefit for the maker in a different way, right? And then that leads to a different kind of question, which does not come up very easily, very commonly. And that so it leads to another question, which is not that common, which is licensing. So a product has a very specific licensing model, right? You may be giving it free under GPL or something like that, and you may be charging for services, whatever be it. You may be handing over 5 units of something to someone, and they're giving you, and you're saying, here it is, and you'll get in this price, you'll get some support. Uh, and we did discuss that assets may not necessarily have price attached to it. So what's your go-to licensing model when it comes to assets?
If these are external facing assets, then you have a couple of options, right? You can roll the price into your primary offering instead of like adding it as a different line item onto your invoice. If it is internal, then forget about it, right? It is something which we are doing for increasing our effectiveness or efficiencies internally.
So as
But
long
if
as
it is external,
it should be copyrighted, and that's all you should care about. Yeah.
exactly, that's something which is internal. Uh, but if it is external, then in that situation, you should think about charging for it, because now you can extract benefit out of it. But with asset, you have lot more flexibility to how to extract that benefit, right?
Right.
It can be purely financial in terms of I can charge you. I can say, hey, Dinker, for every customer whom we engage with for this rubric, there is a $10,000 price for this rubric. I can say
Right.
that. And now you may say, I don't need this rubric, or I need this. The second is that I can bake it into my own like primary pricing itself,
Right.
saying that you come with me, and we are better because we use all these tools. And what I learned about is there is this company which is like construction company in India, and it's a public company. When I went to look at their properties, they said that, hey, by the way, our unique proposition is that we make our own bricks. And these bricks are made into a certain standard industry, and they make it only in one place in India. It's like their own manufacturing. They make their own doors and all wooden fittings.
I think I know
And
the builder. Yeah.
exactly. And they were talking about They have designed different lights which they can mount on while construction is happening, so that the color codes are actually very uniform. There are
Right.
no plays in it, all those things. And when I was looking at their description, they not only are constructing houses, but they are generating massive amount of IP
Right.
and economies of scale. So their profitability must be very high because of these efficiencies. But you don't buy doors from them,
Right.
neither you buy bricks from them. You don't even know what is the price of the brick in the market versus what they are charging you. It's a price which is baked in into their final product
Right. Right.
or their construction services. So what I would say is that is another way of doing it, is you don't need to say this is the price and you bake it into your price. So your total price could be premium pricing.
Right.
uh, and the third one, which I feel about, is asset also gives you another set of flexibilities. Is these are very transactional engagements.
Hmm.
So when you do a product, the product itself is like there is some sort of transfer of entitlement or right, which
Yeah.
actually you give it to a person.
Right.
And that's why all these whole things like right to repair and I should be able to know what this product is doing and all those type of things. But when you are giving asset, it's for that one particular transaction.
Hmm.
And after that, your liability is over, your service is over, and everything. I mean, like the whole transaction ends, the scope of the asset ended, essentially. Now you can actually figure out ways in which it can live beyond that engagement. That's okay, but that doesn't need to be uh, like decided before you start building one asset.
Right.
So I do believe that we should think about anytime you are thinking about asset, the pricing is something so much flexible compared to your products that you can leverage. There are so many levers. It can be made very interesting.
Yeah, and I really liked you bringing out the analogy of were you referring to total environment?
No, the Soba developers,
Shobha Develop.
they, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, but I mean, it must be a model which,
Probably
like
everyone has started
the
building.
large players must be doing that. Yes.
Yeah, and there's value in it, right? It is an asset with them. It is something very core to their offering. It probably does encode their hard knowledge about materials, longevity of material, and what kind of material they have for that city and that environment. So it has that aspect to it, right? Yeah, it is something they have been doing over and over and over again. So they have probably created a very reusable assembly line for creating them, right? And there is no price. They don't say that if you buy this apartment, you'll pay this much extra because we're using generic brick. If you buy this apartment, you have to pay extra because we're using our bricks. That's not how they are doing, right? It's totally the asset has no price of its own, but definitely its price is baked in, but it is adding the value overall, time to market, and the quality of the final product that is getting delivered. So I hadn't thought of, I hadn't realized that real estate could be an example of assets, but thanks for calling it out. So I think to summarize, Sachin, I think we both are definitely on an agreement that assets are important.
Yes.
Organizations should spend time thinking about it, extracting them in a much more meaningful manner with questions like, who else can benefit from it, how often will they benefit from it, and if it's not done in a comprehensive, systematic manner, what kind of negative effects it will have. That will justify all the cost of extracting out the asset, standardizing it, putting it the enough amount of quality into it, right? And then over and over again, you have an asset that is saving you time, it's saving you cost, and it's ensuring base quality. So and Assets have to be beyond code, especially in software. They can also be your processes, and need not be a piece of tech. They could be a document, they could be a spreadsheet, they these could be frameworks, these could be canvases, these could be way of working, sensible defaults, playbooks, all those kind of things. So I one of the things that got suggested was that in our podcast we should ask people some questions, right? And say that
Yeah.
write your answer in the comments. People also told me that you should say please like and subscribe. I'm not very
It's a very cringy thing, right? It's like uh,
yeah,
yeah,
and then I don't think we young enough to get that. I mean, it's cringy for you and me, Sachin, but it's not
yeah,
cringy for the generation which for whom YouTube videos are a regular way of expression. But I do want to ask this question if to the people who are listening, if you're okay to share, do share some assets that you wanted to make but could not, and some assets that you were able to make. It will be interesting to hear those stories. And don't put any confidential information or information that you're not. And these are the
yeah,
things also I don't think today's it's these are the things I think our generation says, right? Don't
yeah.
put anything confidential in the document.
Right. Dinker, and we should actually sometime talk about connected piece. Is today we are just thinking about, hey, extract assets, build assets. But in true sense, there is second set of problems just waiting around the corner. Is discoverability of these assets.
Hmm.
How do you actually spread these assets, the knowledge about them, and how to make sure that these assets are virgin? I mean, one of the biggest challenge is that you need to be able to manage these assets in the same way you manage physical assets,
Right.
because they also have a life cycle with it. So there are a couple of examples we should talk about, and they came recently by working with some of the customers, so we can definitely discuss this little bit more deeper as well.
So when you said discovery, you did not mean that how can I discover an asset in my ways of working in my current BAU. What you were mentioning is once an asset has been created, how does the whole enterprise know that this asset is now available,
Yes,
right? And actually, maybe we should talk about the first part also. Product thinking comes kind of naturally to us, so I'm not sure if that happens with everyone. Maybe we could have a discussion on how to identify assets and what kind of steps can be taken to extract them into these standalone reusable entities. So this sounds good, Sachin. This was a good discussion, and definitely we'll discuss on these topics in a future podcast. And
absolutely.
yeah, and thanks everyone for listening, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Yeah,
Thank you so much.
bye bye.